My name is Nur Nafsadara Binti Hanizam, and I will present to you about sex education should be taught since primary school. There are so many cases about sex among children. Based on this article, a total of 1,721 cases of sexual crimes against children were recorded from January to June 30 this year. According to Deputy Minister of Women, Family and Community Development Puan Siti Zaila Muhammad Yusof, she said, based on statistics from the Royal Malaysian Police PDRM, there were 651 rape cases, 344 molest cases, 106 incest cases, 106 unnatural sex cases, and 1,540 cases for offences under Sexual Offences Against Children 2017. Imagine if one of the victims are our daughter, sister, or friends. Would we be sad and angry? So, this is why sex education should be taught since primary school. Sex education is acquiring information about the development of our bodies, sexuality, sex, and sexual behavior. Sex education aids people to get the information, motivation, and abilities to make the right decisions about sex and sexuality. Teenagers need this kind of information in order to make the right choices and protect themselves. There are three major reasons why sex education should be taught since primary school. The first reason why sex education should be taught since primary school is to create awareness among students. By learning sex education since primary school, students can know how to protect themselves from any sexual abuse at a young age. There are many teenagers who are sexually abused but do not come forward to the authorities on it, and sometimes it is due to the fact that they do not comprehend what sexual abuse is. Teenagers are often vulnerable and can be preyed on without them even noticing. The cases in Malaysia are getting serious. According to Sexual Welfare Department of Malaysia indicated each year at least 1,000 children in Malaysia are reported as victims. So, when they receive the proper education about the subjects, they will know that people cannot take advantage of them sexually. For instance, teach them how to say no in a proper way. Teach them how to identify violation of boundaries and touching or forms of contact that are unnecessary or unwanted. Other than that, it can help young people to be more prepared for the life changes. It is very important to kids to know about their body. When they are in puberty, there are so many things on their body change. They need to know how and why their body change, and indirectly it will develop self-esteem to help students and the adolescents. When they learn sex education at a young age, they will learn about their body and they will know that it is normal. For example, puberty, menopause, and aging. Besides that, it can teach them to accept their gender. When kids have a knowledge about their own gender, it will reduce the number of homosexuality. If they are not taught about both heterosexuality and homosexuality, they can easily fall prey to the homosexuals who are lurking in the sexuality shadows. Sex education will encourage heterosexuality, healthy relationship between males and females. It will teach students about sexual preference and that homosexuality is not hereditary. For example, lesbian and gay. I have explained to you my first point. Let's move on to the next point, which is reduce the number of rape cases. As we all know, there are so many cases of teenagers or men that addicted watching porn, even though it will causes a big impact in their body and life. That is why it's very important to teach kids to know about the impact of their behavior in order to reduce the number of rape cases. This can be seen when kids be educated about this start at young age. they will know about the impact of porn addiction and the consequences of the masturbation, such as it can interrupt their studies and it can cause addiction. In addition, it also can create awareness about the consents. Notice there are so many teenagers, whether boys or girls, do not know that their behavior is a part of sexual harassment. From the Royal Malaysia Police PDRM 2013 to 2017 statistics, out of a total of 1,218 sexual harassment cases, 79% involved with women victims, while 21% were male victims. The reality is that young people need this information about sex harassment so that it can increase the awareness about this topic among teenagers. So, by learning sex education since primary schools, kids will know about the type of sex harassment such as catcalling, stalking, and dirty talk, so that they know what that is. They know that it is wrong to do so. Other than that, they will have a knowledge about laws regarding rape. Based on the statistics issued by the Penang Women Center for Change, an average 30,000 rape cases were reported in Malaysia each year, with only 2 of 10 cases reported. As you can see, this is a very serious matter that our society needs to be aware of this. We need to expose these issues to kids so that they will know about the law of rape in Malaysia and knowing the consequences of raping. For instance, sentence to prison, fine, and whipping. You already know about my second point, and so I will explain to you my last point, which is increase the knowledge about the risk of having unprotected sex. Teenagers and unprotected sex in a hypersexualized society that continues to thrive as each day passes. The thought of unprotected sex has lost the shock value it once possessed. It is now considered normal to hear teenagers bragging about not only their concussums but the unprotected sex they are having. Unprotected sex as it relates to teenagers has become a big problem in the world today for two main reasons, which are lack of education and lack of consent. This is why we need sex education to educate our kids about unprotected sex, and indirectly, it can prevent the disease of having unprotected sex such as AIDS, HIV, and STI. Besides that, it can reduce unwanted pregnancy. Sex education plays a major role in the reduction of teenage pregnancies. It has been proven that sex education can help to scale down teenage pregnancies and births. In 2002, research from the University of Washington did a study on heterosexual teenagers ages 50 to 90. This study was based on 1,719 teens. The results showed that 25% of teenagers were taught abstinence only education, 9 received no education at all, and 66% were taught sex education with mention of birth control. The teenagers who received sexual education were 60% less likely to become pregnant or get someone else pregnant than those who receive no sexual education. Teenagers who received the abstinence-only education were 30% less likely to become pregnant than those who did not receive any sexual education. In this study, it is evident that sex education does help to reduce teenage pregnancies and that it should be taught. Kids also will knowing about the risk of pregnant in early age. For example, miscarriage and premature birth. Lastly, it can create awareness about safe sex. Kids will be exposed about the method of contraception such as condom, oral contraception, and calendar method. I have already explained to you about my 3 main points, and I really persuade to each of you to agree that sex education should be taught since primary school. Now that you already know, there are three major reasons why sex education should be taught since primary school. Firstly, to create awareness among students. Secondly, to reduce the number of rape cases. And lastly, to increase the knowledge about the risk of having unprotected sex. In conclusion, sex education should be introduced in schools because most schools-going children, usually composed of teenagers and youths at their early adulthood, are the most sexually active individuals in the society. Most teenagers experience the peak of their sexuality while still in schools and college, and thus displaced from the best targets for sexual education. Every teenager should have sex education incorporated into their schooling. Sex education should be mandatory, comprehensive, medically accurate, and taught throughout students' school years, just like other subjects. It has been shown to help students, not harm. Not only is having access to sex education that is not only comprehensive, but medically accurate a human right. It is our fundamental duty as a society to educate the next generation. After all, education does not hurt, but ignorance does.